Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna. This is episode number 285 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all your filthy casual takes on the world of sports. And in this episode, we're here to do a weekly roundup of my NFL team, the San Francisco 49ers, as we look back at the week that was for them and the week that will be for them. And yeah, this is the first edition of that. And I gotta say, for my red and gold, not exactly the best week for them as we kick off their 2025 NFL season. So, in a nutshell of how we're going to be doing things for my San Francisco 49ers this season, it's kind of pretty much how we originally started things here on Very Cold Lasagna for the red and gold. We would talk about the previous week that happened for them and then move on to the next week that is to come for them. So, yeah, it's kind of how it was back in 2021 when we first started talking about the NFL here on the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast, both on the video and audio side of things before we made our way over to just exclusively on YouTube. But we're going to run it back once again, making sure video and the audio people are on equal playing fields. So, yeah, we're doing it once again, running it back to our weekly roundup for my San Francisco 49ers. So, yeah, I'll go through the layout as we go along. Yeah, we're very untraditional here on the podcast, but that's how it is when you run a filthy casual podcast. But anyway, for those that are new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the follow on my socials at Very Cold Lasagna. Leave your filthy casual takes in the comments below or send me a message on Twitter, Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And with that being said, let's get the ball rolling and talking about the week that was and the week that's coming up for my San Francisco 49ers, the red and gold team in the National Football League. So, yeah, the season for my San Francisco 49ers, there were expectations to start off strong, start off hopefully injury-free, no injury worries, and just try to at least do rebound from an injury mania that was once again running wild in Santa Clara, California. But unfortunately, the preseason didn't really set that standard. At least with injury mania. But fortunately, it was just short-term injuries, nothing in the long term for right now. And week one continued to set that standard. But yeah, let's actually talk about week one. Let's talk about week one for the 49ers as they took on the Seattle Seahawks in the first of two road games to kick off their year. And, looking at both of these teams for my Niners and the Seattle Seahawks, they were pretty much a retooled team for the 49ers. Looking at them defensively, they got their defensive coordinator back in Robert Saleh. So you're expecting a pretty hefty defense on that side of the ball. Offensively, not much has really changed other than a depleted depleted receiving core. And on the other side of the ball, you had the debut of new Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold and how that offense was going to look. So it was going to be an intriguing game of, how both of these teams were going to look in their kind of slightly new retooled team. So let's look at some of the things that I personally took away from this game for my San Francisco 49ers first. You look at that offense that I just talked about. That offense and its play calling, it was pretty bad. It was pretty ugly. Throughout this game, this whole first game one, like you look at how Brock Purdy played, not exactly the prettiest, and it had a strong start at first to the game with a long, good opening possession, capped off with a touchdown to George Kittle from Brock Purdy. So yeah, it was a pretty strong start for the 49ers, even though it was pretty lengthy. But unfortunately, when they were back on the field after getting a stop on the Seahawks, the second drive came at a price because after a lot of people like me were wondering where the hell was George Kittle? Like where was that man after I believe he took a shovel pass from Purdy. He was nowhere to be seen anymore. He was nowhere to be seen. We didn't see George Kittle on any more of the drives. Well, it turned out that for all the people watching at home like me, Kittle was no longer in the game. And why was that? He injured his hamstring. So, yeah, what a way to start off the year if you're a 49ers fan. Like I said, injury mania continues to run wild in the land of the Bay. So, because of that, that led to their good start devolve into a very ugly rest of the day. A lot of which I didn't understand for the most part because you lost George Kittle, but you still had a kind of receiving core that's it still lacked Brandon Ayuk as he returns back from that torn ACL that he suffered last year. But you still had some receivers to go to, like Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, names to go to. But it's just like Kyle Shanahan didn't drop more stuff for Purdy to go to. He didn't drop a lot of things for Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall made some nice plays I'll mention on later because he had a very solid performance in this one, but he just kept drawing up shit. Kyle Shanahan just kept dialing the number for Brock Purdy to Christian McCaffrey exclusively, as if there was nobody else that Kyle Shanahan could trust. Like, really? This is where the random unknowns. This is where you need the bench players to step up, make a name for themselves, especially when the starters are down and they're hurting inside, brother. But anyway, going back to Ricky Pearsall, he had a very solid performance in this game, and he really did well in the clutch. He had a near touchdown late in the game, had it not been deflected by Tariq Woolen. But he came in, like I said, he came in clutch with a long bomb catch that put the Niners near the red zone in the last 5 minutes of the game. So had he not caught that, well, the Niners would have been in trouble because they were like, I think I remember correctly, they were tied or they were down 4. But either way, yeah, they did pretty well. But on the flip side, the offensive line, which I've always had a hateful relationship with. Yes, I've hated that 49ers offensive line for how many seasons now? It's been 4 seasons and counting since I started this podcast because the lack of negligence, the lack of care, the lack of attention that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch just refuse to make it good. They don't want to make it good. Whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, and now you have Brock Purdy. It was surprising. Well, first of all, it was surprisingly 50-50 against a tough Seattle front that included DeMarcus Lawrence, Byron Murphy II, and of course, Pro Bowler Leonard Williams. But they, of course, went back to their terrible habits of letting Brock Purdy get pressured so much that he actually threw 2 stupid interceptions, which was a combo of Purdy doing bad, making those stupid throws, and then, of course, the offensive line not doing their job. Surprisingly, the people not doing their jobs was Trent Williams and Dominic Puni. And surprisingly, I'm not a statistics guy, but I did see an interesting stat that the center, Jake Brendel, normally he's the worst of the bunch, but he actually allowed no pressures and no sacks in this game. That's pretty surprising if you ask me. But nonetheless, we get to the end of the game. The unsung hero was the backup tight end, replacing George Kittle, Jake Tongus. Nobody's heard of the guy. I haven't heard of the man, but he caught all 3 of Purdy's final 3 passes in the game, including the go-ahead touchdown that should have been intercepted by Tariq Woolen, by the way. Yeah, that was a very interceptable ball, if that's a word, by Reek Woolen. But Tongus stole it from him. He recaptured that ball from Tariq, and yeah, he swiped it from Woolen and took it for himself for the touchdown, for the go-ahead touchdown. So, yeah, that was your offense for you for the day. Very ugly. The offensive line pretty shitty. Brock Purdy had I would say very bad day, but it was not a great day for him. And we'll talk more about Brock Purdy in a second because there's some pretty big news about him and not in a good way. But continuing on with this game, the defense, they were the stars of this game, and they pretty much saved the team's butts. They saved their butt cheeks. The front seven, you can clearly see Robert Saleh's imprints on them, and pretty much the whole team defense. The front seven, led by Fred Warner, they flew all over the place, and they were swarming past the Hawks offensive line, harassing Sam Darnold, neutering their outside running game. So yeah, that run game was barely alive for Seattle, outside of a few big runs. But one of the big plays that the defense made was rookie safety Marquez Single, the rookie, making his first start. And he did well in the preseason. He nabbed a forced fumble that was caused by his teammate Sam Okuo. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I'm terrible with names in general. But yeah, those two combined for a forced fumble. Well, the offense didn't really do anything out of it, but it was a good play by the safety. And then, yeah, you saw the help that Nick Bosa was finally getting. That the signings that Nick Bosa needed, it paid off. It paid off at least in this first game. Yeah, like that signing for Mykel Williams, that drafting of Mykel Williams, it was kind of a quiet day for him, but he still made an impact. And then also starting a bunch of young studs like Siegel, Renardo Green, Dean Winters, among others. Sure, it was a big gamble, but it was necessary for them to gather experience. So yeah, it was a pretty good day for the defense on last Sunday. Well, yeah, it was a gamble, but it was a good first starting point for what's going to be a retooled and kind of young defense. Meanwhile, you have the special teams. Oh man, where do we go with the special teams? Jake Moody. Moody. This was a fun game. It was a fun game to show Jake Moody because I just loved how Kyle Shanahan reacted, and he was pretty much like all of us, pissed off, upset, angry, disappointed, as if this was like the first time he was like upset at Jake Moody, as if this was his first time like pissed off at the man. Like you can clearly tell, like the Fox cameras or like caught him like in 4K being that pissed off at him, like for the first time ever, when we had known, like every single 49ers fan knew for how many seasons since Jake Moody has been around, like 3 seasons. This has been an issue because, well, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch didn't want to admit that they wasted a 3rd round pick on a kicker. Yeah, that's a cardinal sin. One of the cardinal sins in the NFL. Never draft a kicker that high. Like you always draft them very low or let them go undrafted. But yeah, Jake Moody, he had a great day, doinking an easy, makeable 23-yard field goal, and then he had another one blocked, which in fairness wasn't real necessarily his fault because an offensive lineman couldn't do their job, but it still made Kyle Shanahan pissed. But hey, he made a 33-yard field goal in the 4th quarter to tie the game up, but that shouldn't excuse his shit performance. No, that shouldn't excuse that. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And it at least finally woke Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch up, releasing Jake Moody's ass 2 days later, and they replaced him with Eddie Dinero from the Carolina Panthers. So we'll talk more about the Jake Moody situation, but yeah, for the 49ers, it was a pretty sloppy day on their end. But as for the Seahawks, touching on them a little bit, their front four had a very, very solid performance in harassing Brock Purdy all day because, well, their offensive line sucks. And yeah, the front four for Seattle forced him to throw under duress pretty much all day on nearly all of his drop back passes, and they drove him out of the pocket. Now, if this was like Mac Jones playing, then they would have had Seattle's defense would have had a field day in getting to Mac Jones. The best plays from that quartet, from DeMarcus and Leonard Williams, among others, was forcing Purdy to throw 2 very stupid interceptions to Ernest Jones IV and Josh Joby. So they made some really good impact plays on the defense, but unfortunately, Sam Darnold, the offense, they couldn't take advantage of that. Now, Sam Darnold, the offense, they had some flashes here and there, but just like with the 49ers offense, the offense for the Seahawks wasn't exactly great in this game. They were actually very slow. Now, again, Sam Darnold, in his debut, he made some nice runs to get some first downs, but he was also kind of petrified by that 49ers defense. And he also was kind of having some chemistry issues with Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba, other than the big 30-plus yard pass in the final 2 minutes of the game in that 2-minute drill. But yeah, like moments like that, the blocked field goal and the 2 interceptions, the offense couldn't really capitalize on that. Like, had they did, they would have like blown the brakes off of the 49ers, no matter what their defense did. So yeah, blowing those moments, not capitalizing on that, eventually did the Seahawks in. So instead of a game-winning touchdown on Seattle's final drive, Sam Darnold instead fumbled the ball into the hands of Nick Bosa to seal the game in favor of the 49ers. So when you look at this game, obviously for Seattle, this is the game that got away from them. A sloppy game for both teams. Seattle wanted to win it more than the 49ers, but obviously they just couldn't piece things together on how to win this one. As for the 49ers, I'm not exactly encouraged by this first game and that first win on Sunday, but there's still 16 more games to go in the season to make adjustments in spite of clear deficiencies and obviously what had turned out throughout this past week. So speaking of that, the injury scares and the actual injuries coming out of this game should really concern 49ers fans. And I was initially going to use the word discourage, but that's putting it bluntly. So yeah. Looking on those injury concerns and scares, at varying points of the game, Fred Warner, Trent Williams, and Dominic Puni, they left at various points of the game, but then they came back. But you had guys like George Kittle and Jawan Jennings. They left the game with injury, never to return. Like I said, with George Kittle, he left with the early hammy injury, and then Jawan Jennings, he picked up the shoulder injury somewhere in the fourth quarter, and he never came back. Then, then there was an injury that we never knew about with Brock Purdy, but we'll touch on that in a bit. But regardless of the significance of their injuries, the 49ers are going to have to make do with what they have, what we saw in late in Seattle. You're just going to have to, they may be 50-50 in doing that. But yeah, it's just not a good sign. It's just not a good sight of what we saw in Seattle. And hopefully it doesn't translate over to the next week in New Orleans against the Saints. So overall, not exactly a great game in Seattle. But I mean, sure, a win is a win, but it came at a high price, if you ask me. High prices, multiple prices. But still a lot to go throughout the season, but still not exactly an encouraging start. So speaking of next week, we look ahead to the Niners' next game, which is again on the road, and then we'll get the homestand for the next 2 games. But looking at this week, the 49ers head out to the Big Easy, or as I like to call it, the Big Hard, because it's been hard times for New Orleans because, it's not exactly a gloomy situation for their opponents. And, they also lost out on a WrestleMania, which apparently is heading to Saudi Arabia. So not only did New Orleans lose out on potential WrestleMania, which is going to Las Vegas next year, they also lost out on 2 WrestleManias, which the following year, which is going to Saudi Arabia. But anyway, the Niners are taking on the New Orleans Saints in week 2. Looking back at the not the WrestleMania, the Saints in week 1 against the 49ers division rival Arizona Cardinals. The Saints didn't exactly do all that well, but they hung in there against Arizona and kept them at bay. But Spencer Rattler's first game as the full-time starter, it was middling at best, but they still had a chance to win the game and send the game into overtime. But unfortunately, Spencer Rattler overshot Juwan Johnson for the game-tying touchdown. There's no time left on the clock, and they ended up losing to Arizona 20-13. So there were not exactly, I wouldn't say not exactly good things about Spencer Rattler, but there were a few positives. But the Saints team, no matter where you splice it, they're in a rebuild, whether you like it or not. So looking at this game, some of the players to watch in this one, obviously the quarterback battle. It's the quarterback battle, and it's gonna be either, depending on your definition of it, it's gonna be a decent one or it's gonna be a very shitty one because of the defenses or just the sloppy quarterback play. So let's look at the 49ers side of things. Yeah, this matchup suddenly became a matchup of middling QBs because, well, I talked about Brock Purdy like pretty frequently when I talked about the Seattle game, because news came out that Brock Purdy had been dealing not just with the shoulder injury, but with turf toe. And throughout the week, as we found out recently, like later on, Brock Purdy is now going to be out 2 to 5 weeks with turf toe. And that's great. Even more great news to start off the week, start off the season for my 49ers. What is this? Like, seriously, what are we? The Baltimore Ravens of the West Coast? Are we just that injury riddled? Like, did someone like pick up a skull, like dig out a skull, and now we're in a poltergeist? Like, we're so cursed. Like, this team is so damn cursed, or it's either that or they have like the worst strength and conditioning staff ever, and like someone needs to be fired. Hell, send most of the coaching staff and strength and conditioning staff away. But anyway, for the 49ers, the next man up is Mac Jones. So Mac Jones obviously has starting experience during his time with New England, being the 10th overall pick back in 2021. But now he's here in the red and gold, but he didn't exactly do well in the preseason, and he didn't even play in the preseason finale against the Chargers because of an injury that he picked up somewhere along the way. And yeah, Mac Jones is just a big step down for a team already missing its 2 most important pieces on offense. Yeah. And this was the man that Kyle Shanahan wanted to draft initially in 2021 before they decided to draft Trey Lance because of fan pressure. And I was one of those fans that peer pressured Kyle Shanahan into drafting Trey Lance. Well, here we are now. Full circle moments, pal. Man. So, I talked about Mac Jones like years ago when we first started this podcast. He has the big arm. He has the big arm, deep passing ability, but he lacks the mobility. He's not a mobile quarterback. He lacks the pocket presence that Brock Purdy does. He also has an even worse offensive line that he dealt with when he was with the Patriots. He had a reasonable offensive line in New England before it completely deteriorated in 2023 and maybe even 2024. So yeah, these next few years are gonna be next few years. What are we advancing like after the season already? These next few weeks are gonna be rough. If Mac Jones can't handle the heat, or if Mac Jones like hasn't learned jack shit under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch throughout this offseason. Meanwhile, Spencer Rattler. He has a chance to pick on a 49er defense that's probably going to see the field a lot in this game because of Mac Jones's potentially crappy play. But Rattler has his own issues with his inability to push the ball downfield. He was only averaging, again, I don't use statistics a lot. he was only averaging like 5 to 10 yards per down. And he doesn't want to like push the deep ball. And he also put receivers in danger and passing it in very tight windows. So Rattler is also going to be dealing with a much tougher defense than Arizona's was. So even if he has a good supporting cast around him, like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara, yeah, he's going to be dealing with a much tougher defense, and his offensive line is also not good, and one that's also dealing with injuries. Then some other players to watch is the Saints front seven, notably Cam Jordan at edge rusher and linebacker Demario Davis. Obviously, your Pro Bowler and All Pro Cam Jordan. It's going to challenge whoever's going to be going up against, whether it's going to be Trent Williams or Colton McKivitz. But he is, again, on the older side, while Demario Davis is going to lock in on the run defense, whether it's Christian McCaffrey and Brian Robinson Jr. And then the newest kicker for my 49ers, Eddie Dinero Pinheiro. Can he make that dinero, though? As I previously stated, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch finally took some accountability, something that triple fraud Paul Levesque cannot do, and released Jake Moody. Yeah, he released Jake Moody. They released Jake Moody and replaced him with Eddie Pinheiro, formerly with the Carolina Panthers. So Pinheiro, he's actually had a strong success rate with field goals. Mostly under 50 yards though, but not so much beyond that. And he's also struggled with extra points, so that should be a red flag though. But nonetheless, I'm hoping that Pinheiro can provide some success with us. He can provide some more stability to the kicker position. If not though, then Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have to try again. And the good thing about Pinheiro is that he's on a rental contract. So if he does bad on this audition, however long it is, then Kyle and John can cut bait with him and find another kicker. Then we have receiver Kendrick Bourne, previously playing with the 49ers from when he was a rookie up to 2020. Bourne re-signed with the 49ers recently after being released by the Patriots just before the season started. The receiver room is still pretty thin with the previously mentioned quarterback downgrade in Mac Jones. But Bourne at least knows Kyle Shanahan's system, given he was drafted by him years ago in 2017. And he's also familiar with how Mac Jones plays when they were in New England together. So looking at the injury report for both of these teams, obviously I mentioned that Brock Purdy's going to be out 2 to 5 weeks with that turf toe. He's also dealing with a shoulder injury, but it's not as serious as the turf toe. And hopefully that he's not going to be put on short-term IR, which Lynch and Shanahan are considering at the as of right now. But hopefully his rehab will be fine. And we'll see Brock Purdy sooner rather than later. George Kittle was unfortunately placed on short-term IR, which means he'll miss 4 games at minimum with the hamstring injury, which is a major blow to the offense that relies on one of their 2 best weapons. So next man up is going to be Braden Willis, who Kyle Shanahan's going to call up to the active roster from the practice squad. I'm not sure why it's not Jake Tongus, who was the game hero from week 1, but maybe they'll interchange them. Jawan Jennings, he had a shoulder injury in the Seattle game, but his MRI and CT scans it showed nothing serious. He was also recently at practice doing light workouts, so he's a 50-50 shot call to play in this game. So at least there's some kind of 50-50 news on him. And then the third string running back Jordan James, who kind of had a decent preseason. He's expected to be hopefully active for week 2 after suffering the broken finger injury. But if he does play, it'll be great for the running back room that's kind of depleted right now. For the New Orleans Saints, not so good news for them because they lost their safety Julian Blackmon because he tore his labrum and now he's set for probably season-ending injury. Now Blackmon played the entire game Sunday, but something must have went wrong on that same shoulder that he had surgery on back in January. So yeah, that Saints secondary, which had already lost Tyrann Mathieu to retirement just before training camp 2 months ago, took a major hit again. So now they're gonna have to find Julian Blackmon's retirement replacement before this contest on Sunday. And then some people that have 50-50 shots to play are Trevor Penning, who is dealing with the toe injury, and then Chase Young, who's dealing with the calf injury. So Penning is much needed on the offensive line, and then Chase Young is much needed on the defensive line. So both of them missed last Sunday's game with those injuries, but they each have a chance to make their season debut this Sunday if they practice at least once on Friday as I'm recording this. So looking at the keys to victory for both of these teams, for my San Francisco 49ers, obviously, the whole team has to play mistake-free, including Mac Jones especially. I mean, it's just as simple as that. But for Mac Jones specifically, he's got to make the right throws, go beyond his limitations. Yeah, he's an immobile quarterback, but just make the simple right decisions for that man. If he could play like he did in his rookie year, run back the clock, even with the crappy O-line, then Jones can be somewhat decent and lead this team to victory, hopefully. And the offensive line's got to do their job as well. Be at least somewhat decent in protecting Mac Jones, because this unit allowed Purdy to get pressured a whole lot against Seattle and allowed Purdy to get sacked a couple of times and allowed him to throw those stupid-ass interceptions. And again, going back to Jake Brendel, who was usually the worst offensive lineman in that group, he allowed none of that. So the Saints defensive front, at least on paper, it's not as daunting as Seattle's, but you never know what will happen. And like I talked about with Eddie Pinheiro, he's got to make the kicks that matter. He's got basically make most of his kicks, especially the easy ones. Like, you don't want to be another Jake Moody, man. You don't. And then looking at the New Orleans Saints, you got to get someone other than Cam Jordan to put heat on Mac Jones. If Chase Young doesn't play, then that's going to be another big hit for that Saints defensive front. So you got to find someone on the edge and in the interior to help Cam Jordan to dismantle that terrible 49er offensive line. Especially given that Mac Jones is a pure pocket quarterback. So this is a good chance for someone to step up. On the offensive side of the ball, going back to Spencer Rattler, just like with Mac Jones, he's got to go beyond his limitations. Like, push the ball downfield, like go throw the deep ball to someone like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, somebody. This is a young 49ers secondary. This is a chance for Rattler to rebound some, learn some new things and go beyond his limitations. Like, don't be scared to throw the deep ball. He did some of that a little bit in the final games of last year, including, I believe he did that in the finale against Tampa Bay when the Bucs needed to clinch the NFC South. So why can't he do it? Why can't he do it now? I don't know. So yeah, it's going to be the first of a couple tests for the 49ers, starting with New Orleans, given that, well, they don't have Brock Purdy. They don't have George Kittle. They still have most of their starters there, but the offensive line is pretty crappy, but they still got a pretty good defense so far. Just got to hope that there's not going to be any more injuries for the time being, and hopefully not ever. So I'm not going to give any predictions because, again, any given Sunday, just got to say any given Sunday that something can happen for my San Francisco 49ers. But yeah, especially given with the quarterback situation, I expect this game to be closer than you think. So let me know your thoughts on this game between my San Francisco 49ers and the New Orleans Saints. And faithful, what are you expecting out of this game, especially for Mac Jones starting the next few games in place of Brock Purdy? Let me hear your thoughts. Let me hear your opinions in the comments below on YouTube or on my socials. Send me a DM at Very Cold Lasagna. So that's going to put a wrap on this episode of Very Cold Lasagna, episode number 285 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all your filthy casual takes on the world of sports, and put a bow on this roundup of my San Francisco 49ers for the week number 1. And we'll be back next week to talk about the New Orleans Saints game and look ahead to the third week for my red and gold as they take on the Cardinals in week 3. But that's next week. So for now, we'll look ahead. We'll look at this week. We looked at this week And yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. But for now, that is it. I'm signing out. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna. And until I see you, when I see you in the next one, peace.